Well, thanks, folks, for coming tonight. I hope that this is worthwhile. If we think it is, and we want to do another session, then we can certainly look at that. Um, I have some shots that I took a couple days ago, Monday, and I'm dying to look at them, and I have not touched my disc. So we'll see how that goes. Um, I think this will be pretty interesting. I mean, for this to be an open discussion. So open mic, just yell out your questions, or um, I'll try to cover a lot of ground tonight. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. Anyone have any questions before we get started?
No.
Okay. So share my screen. And I'll move you guys around somewhere. Start down there. So I have a couple. If you see that somebody is waiting to come in, let me know. I may not be able to see it.
Vince,
So
I don't
Vince,
think we can see it either.
you want to make one of us co-host? That way we can watch the waiting room.
okay. Can you guys can't see the
Not unless we're host.
okay. So tell me, Bob, how to do that.
If you go on one of our icons, or
Oh,
there's a
okay.
triple dot button.
Yeah. I'll do that for you, Bob.
Oh, great.
Make co-host. Okay, cool. So can you see my Lightroom screen?
Yes.
Um, okay, I just admitted somebody. Okay, so I have a couple slides just to go through before we get into the actual process of Lightroom, and that's my calibration, which was done a couple days ago. Um, I do this about once a month, and I do it before any large uh, body of work that I'm going to do. You can see a couple variations from what it was to what it was afterwards. Some of them look pretty close or very close. Some of them are not so close. So there is variability there. I wanted to bring this up as a slide so as not to forget. I don't know how Windows works, but on a Mac, the Mac comes with the activity monitor, which is this screen here. It's an app that comes with the Apple. I have it on my bar down below here, if you can see that. Um, and the important part here with the newer Macs is the swap used. Um, my computer has 64 bits or gigabits of what would in a Windows world be considered RAM, but the newer Macs bounce data back and forth between the hard drive and your RAM. And as you start doing a lot of stuff, as I was yesterday when I took the screenshot, the swap goes up. And the swap means that the computer is using your RAM and moving things back and forth from the RAM to the internal hard drive as catch files. And as that swap increases above 2.0 gigabytes, Lightroom will start to slow down because it has to wait for the computer to start moving things around so it can bring things up as you request them. The only way to effectively get rid of the swap and bring it down to what you see here to zero, which is where I am right now, is to close out programs. And that basically gets rid of the cache. Um, uh, Google Chrome is a big user of swap. If that's opened in the background, Safari, most of my swap from that I just showed you from yesterday, that 30 gigabytes came from a some pretty heavy work in Photoshop. Um, and you can notice that as you jump from image to image in Lightroom, the slowdown is occurring. I wanted to give you some idea about the geography of the way my system is set up. And there's with most things in Adobe, there's multiple ways of doing it. This is the way I had been taught years ago, and I have found it to work for me. So in my hard drive, under Vincent, I have a pictures folder. Lightroom is within the pictures folder, and within Lightroom, when Lightroom is closed, this is what you see. Um, when you have Lightroom opened, as it is right now, there's more files that come in here, but this is the what it looks like closed. And my work is in Lightroom Catalog Current. You can name it anything you want. That's how I've named it. And this is everything that's related to Lightroom when it's closed. And my current catalog, Lightroom Catalog Current, 1025 LR Lightroom Cat, Lightroom Catalog. That's the catalog. And we'll refer to that soon. This is the route in my Mac on how I would have gotten there. The next thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out is this. Part of that Lightroom bunch of folders is the Lightroom cache, which you can put wherever you want. But it's critically important from a performance perspective to get rid of the cache. This is what Lightroom did for me yesterday as I was working. And if I do right-click info on my Mac, I have 3.6 gigabytes of cache going on. And that's way too much for Lightroom to continue functioning well. And you can see I have this up noted. I labeled the folder Lightroom cache can delete. So sometimes I have to stop in the middle of work, depends on how long I've been working, etc. On my Mac, Command A will highlight all these and then delete them. You do not need the cache memory after you're done an image. So I usually will discard this after I've done a session so that Lightroom is clean and functioning up to snuff when I'm done. My image, so my catalog, to go back, my catalog is within the hard drive of my Mac. Here it is here, Mac hard drive, users, me, etc. My photos are not. The catalog should be ideally within your computer for speed and efficiency. Your
Hey,
photos
hey,
should,
Vince,
yeah.
question. That you renamed that Lightroom cache. Did you create like it in the Lightroom catalog? It created something called Lightroom cache, and then you renamed it can discard.
Yes. So I would remember I can find that real fast by just going up there, can discard, and I'll show you how I've told Lightroom where how it's named.
Oh, you told Lightroom how to name it. Okay, because I thought then how would Lightroom find it if you renamed something that it created?
I
Okay,
pointed Lightroom to it, and I'll show you that in a slide or so.
gotcha.
So I put can discard, so I that is my reminder.
Mm-hmm.
I won't discard the wrong folder.
Yes.
Oh,
So everybody has this cache catalog within their Lightroom folder.
yes.
Okay.
But you have to determine where you can determine where it goes, and you want it an easy place for you to find, and you have to tell Lightroom, and I'll show you that. Now, your photos should never be on the same drive as the catalog. They should be somewhere, ideally, where they're safe in case one drive fails on your computer, your photos are somewhere else. My catalog is in the computer, but it's backed up somewhere else. And I'll show you that here. I have a Promise Pegasus RAD 5 drive. It's a redundancy drive. It's actually 12 terabytes of a hard drive, of which 10 are functional. It uses 2 to flip things all over the place. So that's plugged into my Lightroom, into my Mac computer. Here's the route of how to get to where we are right now. So the Promise has a Lightroom catalog, which has my photography, my catalog set up by year, and I happen to have open to show you 2026. And these are the folders. This is exactly as it is in Lightroom. Lightroom is not storing the images. They're stored on this Promise Pegasus drive, um, sitting next to my computer. Within this Promise drive is also my Lightroom catalog backup right there. And I put that there in, or got rid of the older ones and put it there in January of 2022. But you'll see that I only have about 6 backups. You don't need your backups, but a couple. And they take up a lot of space, and I delete those out to keep the process smooth. I'll show you that. So photos separate from the
Vince,
computer.
Vince,
Yes.
Vince, quick question. Do you create a new catalog every year, or is this just your
No.
filings?
I have one catalog.
One master. Okay.
Yes. And effectively, everybody says only use one catalog unless you have a very specific thing, like you're doing weddings and you want a catalog per client.
Okay.
Now, my Promise Drive is backed up in the cloud through Backblaze. And here is the icon for Backblaze at my top toolbar. I believe this costs, depending upon what you get, anywhere from $40 to $65 a year. I have indefinite storage. Nothing gets discarded. So if I delete something and happen to have deleted it by accident, 3 days later, I can find it, or 2 years later, it's in my Backblaze backup. This is almost instantaneous once it's up there. And there's 2 TB of I forget exactly how much there is. You say there's 2 million files up there. It's a huge amount of storage. Here, 10 million megabytes. So that's over a terabyte, Bob, I guess. It takes a long time, takes several weeks for it to get up there. But once it's up there now, incrementally, when the computer is not being heavily used, it sends stuff up to the Backblaze cloud. It's the one backup that a huge number of professional photographers utilize. I will also every 3 months back up the Promise drive to a hard drive, which I keep in the safety box in the bank, just as another means to do it. There are multiple ways to do this. You just need to have something. My catalog is backed up through Time Machine and Apple, but Apple doesn't back up external drives. Backblaze will back up anything you want it to back up. You can have 10 drives plugged in and you tell Backblaze, back them all up. And you don't pay by number of drives, you pay by whether you want forever storage, etc. It's a very respected cloud backup.
And you have it backing up your regular computer and your external drive, your Promise drive?
Yes, it backs up every bit of data that I'm actively using, and I also have a backup, a 4 TB drive that's pretty full, that's backed up as well, but that doesn't keep getting replenished. So it's backed up, it's sitting up in the cloud, and it's there if it's ever needed. I did not want to miss having this come up. When you shut down Lightroom, it will ask you if you want to back up, and this is part of the Lightroom catalog preferences. And I would urge everyone to have this come up and say back up every time you exit, and then you can say yes or no. My catalog's big. It takes time to back up, over 10 minutes, maybe 15. I forget how long, but it's not real fast. But if I've only done a little bit of work, I won't back it up. If I've done an hour or 3 of work, I'm going to back it up. But if this isn't marked off every time, then you're going to have to manually remember, and that's a mistake. And then you can pick where you want it to go. So my backup is going into the Promise drive and into this folder. The other thing that's important on the catalog preference, didn't want to miss, these two should be checked off, particularly, well, they're both equally important to make sure that your catalog does not get corrupted with junk. Very important to be doing this every time you back up. I'll try to remember to show you that. There's two things. So that was in the catalog preference. There's two key slides in the Lightroom preferences that I wanted to go over. This is under the General tab, Lightroom Preferences. So Lightroom Preferences right here. And there's several tabs to go through. The default catalog, this is very important. Otherwise, like my buddy, you might have about 20 catalogs and you can never find anything because he kept forgetting to set this part up despite being warned. So this tells Lightroom that every time you tell Lightroom, open up with this catalog, the current catalog. Otherwise, you might open up random catalogs that aren't contiguous with where you are today. This one and the backup are probably the two most important preference spots to look at. And then one more is under the performance of the Lightroom preferences. You use a graphics card to process your work. The recommended setting is on auto. It says here my Apple M2 Max has full acceleration and it does it automatically. But this should not be set for if I want to or if I'm not if I'm having trouble. There's about 3 or 4 options. This should be on auto. And this, J, is where you tell Lightroom where your cache is going. You hit choose and you'll get your whole menu and you can pick and point to where it's going to go. So now I've labeled that can discard and I've told Lightroom this is where the cache goes. It's recommended that the size of this be moved up well above the default, which is somewhere around 20 gigabytes. Otherwise, you'll stop functioning in the middle in your work. I just arbitrarily picked 200 gigabytes. And when you have two ways of getting rid of your cache, you can do it the way I showed you initially by going to that discard cache within your regular directory, or you can hit this and purge cache. So you have two ways of doing it. Again, this is in the Lightroom preferences right there, as opposed to the Lightroom catalog settings, which are also the catalog preferences. So there's two sets of preferences, the catalog and Lightroom itself. So they're the key things I wanted to show you. This is really important. So you can see currently my swap is 0. So right now the computer has not been overworked. It's not juggling a whole bunch of things and bouncing them forwards and backwards. So the Lightroom should be smooth. And one way to tell that is in the develop module, I should be able to go bang, 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 image to image. And if that starts slowing down, then I know something's not, I'm getting hogged up with my RAM and the cache, etc. I want to give you a little tour of my Lightroom. Again, this isn't the only way to set Lightroom up. This is how I was taught by some really good people.
Hey, Vince,
Say again?
can I ask you a question, Vince?
Absolutely.
So
Anyone break in whenever you want to. Hi,
the-
Steve.
the cache, you can delete all of it anytime, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so when I'm done saving my Lightroom catalog every time I exit out, you have a whole slew, and maybe you touched on this already, you have a whole slew of catalogs from the past. So how do you know which ones you can finally get rid of so you're not just saving a bunch of old catalogs?
That's a great question, Jay. Let me bring mine up. So my catalogs, my old catalogs are in my Promise drive, right? My external drive. I had shown you a slide of that, and I didn't show you this though. So that's what I have. These are when I saved my catalogs. Let's see how big that is. 79 gigabytes of storage there, which is um, a lot of memory. And again, you do not want to be storing your backups on the same drive as your catalog because if the drive fails, you've lost your catalog and your backups. So today, before this session, I backed up the Lightroom when I closed it. This is my backup. It's been zipped. If I double click on it, it will open, it will unzip. Well, let's just do it. And it will then have an LR cat folder within it. And if I double click on that, that's my Lightroom catalog with everything that goes with it. So if my computer dies and this is on my Promise drive and I plug the Promise into a new computer and hit um, this LR cat, it will then populate just as if I was on my current catalog. So the zip is compressing, it's a compressed file. It's now unzipping. And here it is. Lightroom catalog current 1025 LR CAT. That's the Lightroom catalog that was backed up earlier today. So you really only need one backup, but for belt and suspenders, you should have a couple. So I don't really need this one. So I'm right now in front of everybody. I'm just going to trash that one. Because I know that I've opened my Lightroom repetitively. It's working fine. But if I had a problem, I could pick any of these backups and open. Does that answer your question, Jay?
Yeah, I've already um, deleted catalogs from the past, not the most current one, but maybe the third one back from the current one.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I have to take it back out of the trash because my Lightroom won't open up.
But then something else is wrong.
Okay.
That means that you're not opening with the same catalog every time.
Okay.
That one slide I showed you.
Yeah.
Um, that means you're working out of more than one catalog. Or you're like, right. So if you've gotten rid of an old one, just like if I click on this one, it will um, it will ask me, do I want to reopen Lightroom with this catalog? So the old ones these old backups are of no benefit to you other than security. And
Yeah. I got, okay.
you need two or three. So if you're having that problem, maybe we can look at that afterwards another time.
Yeah.
So that gets to the slide that I showed you to um, open with this catalog. Let's see where that was. Um, this one. Nope. When starting Lightroom, always use this. This is my default catalog. So you need to make sure, Jay, on General tab 1 of Lightroom preferences that you're telling Lightroom to only open this one. Otherwise, you're going to be opening up all kinds of different catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
I
have
just,
mine just set to open the most recent catalog, which is one of the options.
yeah,
Is there a problem with that? I mean, I've
probably
never had
not.
an issue with it. The only
Well,
time it ever changes or creates a new catalog is when I sort of had some sort of an update or had to reinstall. I can't remember why, but there was a time when it created a new catalog.
well, every time it updates itself, like yearly, that's going to happen. You're going to get a new catalog, and um,
So I just say when starting up, load the most recent catalog.
I have
yeah,
the same thing, Jenny. It's Rick Shea.
Yeah,
hey,
that
Rick.
always works for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, if it works for you, then don't change it.
That's what. Thank you.
Um,
When you save your catalog, Vince, do you just let it save on its own, or do you put in a like the current date, the date of today, if you saved it today? Do you put in
it
that?
dates it itself, Jay.
Okay.
So again, if we go, let me just see here. Backup catalog. Now I'll have to show you in the promise. So it puts a date um, on the backup.
Okay.
Like, see here, I didn't do that. I just told it to back up.
Okay.
All right. So I was going to tour around my catalog just quickly. Um, there is no longer a need to have more than one catalog. There is um, no limit. That's from Adobe. There is no limit to how many images you can have. I have 170,000. I've talked to pros who have 300, 500,000 images. That's not a reason to get another catalog. Um, the folder from where Lightroom is going for my images is in the Promise Drive under this type of directory system that works for me. That's how I set it up initially. Um, so I have year, month, and then I break up. I may have two or three things in one month. Um, I have this folder open. This is from January, but it has multiple folders within it. As you can see, each one of these has folders. Um, and they're all by month except for this one special one that I have going on with special images. I don't have a month for that one. Someone had asked me about collections, and there was a video about making collections in one of the newsletters recently, but it was mainly for smart collections. But I use a ton of collections. These are all collections. I have smart collections where if certain parameters are met, mainly for my um, textures and elements that I put into my multiple exposures. They'll go into that smart collection. I have, say, under BPS, I'll have multiple and now competitions. For one I wanted to show you, I made reference to this in the newsletter. Here it goes. So, natural lands, and I can answer questions if people have about how to do this, but these are extremely helpful. So when I've gone through my images and I have ones that I think are particularly good, I'll dump those into a collection. And then in April, we'll talk about Sam Abel and the six picture poem. So from this, I then made this, which is my six images from the Green Hills Preserve. And that's how I um, gather images that work for me um, by using these collections. Um, so if we were to um, I'll just do one quick test collection. So up here, collection positive, we'll do a standard collection. A collection set is one that like this BPS that has a bunch of other ones within it. But if we just do a standard collection, and this will be BPS test, and then I'm going to label this one as the target collection. So I now have made this hot. I've made this the one that I want to send images to. So we'll find that one, BPS target. Here it is here. And it has a plus sign. That means it's now the repository for images. And you'll see there's an image in there. That's because one of the boxes said to include the highlighted image. But now what I want to show you is if I'm working in any, like here, I'll pick that image and that's too big. Let me pick something different. I'll pick this image, and if I wanted to go into the catalog that I have as the target, I hit the letter B like in boy, and that just got added to the target collection. Now I'll go to this one, say, yep, that's the one I want in the target, and then go down to my target collection, which has that little plus sign right there. And it has those three images in it. I can get rid of the target. I'm done with putting pictures in there. I want to make something else a target later. I can then go to the next one, right click and set it as the target. So this is that test one. I'm going to get rid of those images because I don't need them. I don't need this collection, or I don't need these images. And you could just remove from collection. It does not get rid of them from Lightroom. My collection now has 0, and I'll get rid of that. I'll delete that collection. The images are safe inside Lightroom.
So Vince,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yeah.
Huh?
Question. When I'm using collections, what I find is that I'll set it up as you said, and then maybe I'll go along for a while, and maybe for 10 or 15 images, they'll just work fine. And then all of a sudden, I click on one, and I hit B, and nothing shows up. And I don't know whether it has been entered or not entered. And this happens to me all the time. And have you ever experienced that?
No, if it's already in your collection and you hit B, oh, I'm wondering do you get that little warning that says add to collection? Because that might be turned off. I'm wondering.
No, I don't know.
So when I say I'll make I'll make this one my target.
Yeah.
So that's going to now accept images. I'm going to go to New York City and hit this one. So watch down the bottom of the screen, add to target BPS Ellis.
Right.
Now I said, nah, I don't really want that. Hit the B again. It's going to now remove it from there.
Yeah.
I've never clicked and then found, oh, geez, it didn't go into my target collection.
Hmm.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, or sometimes the add to the collection will show up like 20 or 30 seconds later. And a lot of times it won't show up, and then I have to go check to see if it's there, and frequently they're there, and frequently they're not there. And so and I'm afraid to go to Adobe with this, because they're gonna want to kind of reinstall my Lightroom and screw up everything. And because I've talked to them about this before, and they said, well, your catalog is too big. You need to set up more. I mean, so I'm getting advice that contradicts what you're saying, what other people say, and I'm afraid to deal with them on this.
Yeah, well, I can guarantee you that the catalog being too big is not the reason,
Yeah.
because that's false.
Yeah.
Most of the people at Adobe are very good, but I had one a couple weeks ago that wanted me to reinstall Lightroom, as you say, and it sets everything back to the default.
Right.
And
Right.
I
Exactly.
said, no, I don't really agree with that. I don't think you're telling me the right thing. I hung up and called back, and the guy gave me the proper answer. And I was quite happy I didn't mess
Oh,
up
okay.
all my defaults. So
Okay.
we
All
can
right.
talk about that again, Steve.
Okay.
Remind me,
All right.
and
Okay.
I'll try to
Okay.
help with that.
Okay.
Uh,
Thanks.
yeah.
Hey,
So
just curious, Vince,
yes,
you're calling into Lightroom. Are they pretty responsive? And is it USA customer support? Just curious.
they're all accented. They sound Indian because I usually call at night. They're
Okay.
extremely good, Jay. I've only had a couple episodes where they were not what I would have expected.
Okay.
They will very quickly take over your computer, and I just tell them at the onset, don't touch anything without telling me what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it works very fine, and I don't hesitate to contact them.
Thank you. And that's part of your subscription to Adobe?
Yes,
That's great.
unlimited. Yep. So what I want to do now is, can you all see this SD card that I'm dying to see? I've never seen these images. Actually, before I do that, I want to show you a couple images and then um, a couple points that I have here. So I put tonight's talk, for example, as under my collection set, BPS related topics, BPS talk 326, and then under that talk, you open that up, I have two things, two folders. So we'll get going with a little processing very quickly with a couple points I wanted to show you. You'll notice that I have a white border around my image. Some people like a gray border, medium or dark. What I have found, and then subsequently learned from some people who teach this, that your exposure for print seems to be better if you have a white border, and I have my prints with white mats or off-white mats, so that's why I'm doing it with a white border. I have found it works out better for me. But a right click on the border, the background will give you whatever color you want. Just to start kind of simply, I don't know what levels that everybody is at, but I wanted to point out a couple features and then we'll do a more complete thing. But this image I thought was pretty cool. Actually, this is the finished image. This was the raw image, and the only reason I'm bringing this up here is I want to show you the object selection tool. There are two ways to do it, with a brush, which is here, or this box. So if I just go over like that, that gives me my mask with an object, and I want to do a second mask with an object, which will be this light here. And it usually does pretty well. It may have missed a little bit there, and then I would have to add to it with another object and then go to the brush tool and just kind of brush that in there. And now I can do whatever I want to do within the headlights there. But the tool, that's a kind of a classic way to use the object tool. But I wanted to show you something else, which I thought was really pretty neat. I want to emphasize the wording. And I think that is pretty amazing. I'm going to make this a little lighter so we can see. And that's not how I would edit it, but just sometimes when you're making masks, you have to increase your exposure temporarily. So I've used the object selection for those letters. This is the mask. I'm going to say add to that. I'm going to pick another object, and I'm just grossly going over that, and it did it. Now I'm going to do a third one, which is the hood ornament, a little out of focus, and it did it. And now I can adjust. If I'm going to now adjust, I would go out of my mask. If you don't know what I'm doing, please ask me. I'm going to bring my exposure back to where it had been. I'm going to go back to my mask and now do an adjustment, say, of decreasing highlights, opening up some shadows. For right now, we'll open the exposure a little bit and then maybe do some texture. And the texture might sharpen that. But I think the neat part is the fact that it was able to grab an object like the writing. The lights are easy. This one I wanted to show you. It's a good example for an intersect, which I use a lot. So I might or might not do global adjustments. We'll get to that in a minute, but I wanted to show you this example. This is the finished product. Sorry, this is the finished product. This was the raw product. And if I use a linear gradient, I'm not happy with the green. I want to darken the green, but not darken the yellow. So if I were to do a linear gradient like that, and then potentially darken the bottom, my yellow is going to get dark. And for this example, I don't want that. So I have a gradient that I think I would want on the field, darkest 50% less and getting less as it goes up. I'm going to combine two different masks. That's the linear mask. And on my Mac, I hit the Option key. And when I do, this becomes intersect. I'll let go of the Option key. I'm on the first mask, which is linear gradient. I have add or subtract. I'm going to hit Option. It turns into intersect. And while I'm holding the Option button, I'm going to hit intersect. And for this one, I'm going to pick color range. And with the color range, it's going to say, well, what color do you want? I'm going to use the eyedropper for, say, the green. And now to test that, if we hit the exposure, the only thing changing is the green among all the yellow. So I can now effectively change the tone of the grass, make it a little darker with my shadows, bring down the highlights, maybe add some black to it, all without affecting the yellow. And I can do the same thing coming down. If I wanted to do another linear gradient coming down, hold the Option key, intersect, and let's do the color range again. Tell it what color. I can prove that by sliding the exposure. You can see it's 100%, then 50%, and gradually goes down, but the yellow is not changing. I'll put the exposure back and now do what I think I need to do, maybe lighten that up a little bit on that mask. And however I wanted to affect that, I'm using two different masks at one time. This is a final image, and I'll run through these little quicker. I don't know if anyone's used the landscape mask, the new one, but it is really good. Let me open up the exposure just so you can see what we're dealing with. Again, this is the final image. So I exposed for the outside so as not to blow it out, but now I have to increase the inside. So I can do an object of this. And it picked the whole window except for this bit, which I would have to brush in. But now if I open that up, I'm going to blow out the outside. It'll get too bright because it's included in the mask. So now I want to subtract what's in the windows. And I think not a very often used mask is the range mask. So the luminance range mask. So if I subtract luminance and tell it, okay, let's get rid of that luminance there. And you can adjust that slider on the right. So now I've subtracted out the glass. And then when I open the exposure for the frame, I'm not affecting the exposure for the glass. Does that all make sense? I'll assume that's a yes. That's the finished image. The new landscape mask is pretty cool. So it's one of the options here, landscape, select landscape, and then it's going to give you options. So it's picked out the snow, that's snow in the field. It's picked out vegetation. Sometimes it gets a little confused with when it calls things mountains that aren't. And it did a pretty decent job with the sky. You'll see it bled over onto the field, but the way this is able to pick out snow and water, I think is really neat. So if you click on snow, then you can say create the mask. And now I can adjust the snow as however I want to adjust it without adjusting the other stuff. If I want to now get the trees over there, a new landscape mask, click on vegetation, tell it to create a vegetation mask, and now I could work on vegetation. Obviously, very grossly done there. And I think the last one I'll show you is this one. This was from this past weekend in New York. It's a, I think, 15 shot vertical pano. Um, and let's see. This is the final image. It's a 3 GB file. It'll take a second. This one, let's see. Yeah. So 3.27 gigabytes. That's the final. This is what I ended up with as for the Pano, 207 megabytes. And unfortunately, I felt I needed to have a little bit more water, so I wanted to see what that looked like. So I brought it to Photoshop and added a little bit more water. So this is a handheld Pano. And this is without any edits. This is the flat image. And you can see I did pretty well. I was the basic problem is I guess I was zoomed too far at 135, and that's why my water cut off. But I was able to hold the panorama pretty well. So that's the unprocessed image, and I think this is pretty powerful stuff here. Landscape. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. So it didn't work well in the sky, but there's a way around that. But it worked very well for most of the architecture. And you can see, so if I tell it yes, architecture, and hit create mask, it got in between here really nicely. And what I did on my image was I painted these in with a brush or the object selection tool. And for the sky, if we go to landscape, make a sky mask, it's pretty bad. So I've used a brush and then added to that mask. And then I'm going between the buildings, painting the buildings with my sky mask. Get down in between all the cracks. So now everything that I want is done. And now I'll subtract landscape, architecture, which leaves me a pretty good mask. It missed here, and I took those out with an object tool, so that I could then work on buildings. And then I picked some individual buildings I wanted to accentuate. And let's look at the water. And you can see how it went through and picked out the water. So it's a pretty neat tool. So
Vince, how new is the landscape mask?
uh, 3 months.
Okay.
I know Val has to leave early. So before I do mine, let me go to oh, here we go. let me go to one of, I may even actually skip mine, but I do want to show you how I um, import my images, but let's save that. So these are the images. I brought them into Photoshop, put them into their own folder. Um, February, when I started this, Lightroom Talk, and then I have folders within. So these four are vowels, and we'll pick. I have not processed these. This is pretty classic.
I was gonna say that's the easiest one. I was trying
Okay.
to
How about that one?
pick some hard ones. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so my process, and I think this was really what I wanted to get into tonight, was I would just kind of want to show you my workflow. So we'll go into the develop module, and the first thing that I look at is the histogram to see whether it's going to work. Is it good or is it messed up? Did I way underexpose it or not? And then I look at cropping. Believe it or not, I do my cropping very early, and then um, my white balance. The reason I do my crop early is for me to say, is this or is this not a good image? Is this a workable image? Now, Val has cropped this gorgeously. It looks really good. This one, I don't, it's not going to be a problem. This one, yeah, I'll probably want to crop it there. But so if I take this and my first thought is, do I need to crop it? Is it good? Is it going to work? If she had given me an image like this, I would, and that I pulled up on my own and say, that's not worthy of my time. So I actually start with the cropping um, for the majority of my images. So I'm going to now say, okay, I'm going to do this. So what's the ISO 160? I should not have to do noise reduction. Is the white balance where I want it? Because white balance is going to change how this image is going to get processed. Um, so the white balance slider here,
Vince, can you hear me?
say again.
I have a question on you're talking about the histogram, but now how do you get to the ISO and all of that stuff on the histogram? What are you clicking on to
Right
get?
underneath the histogram, ISO 160.
And
Can you see the red cursor?
it's there all the time?
Yeah. Um, well, you can
Okay.
customize all of this, but yes, it should be there
Okay.
by
All right.
default.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you have to
It
denoise,
just doesn't show when your mouse is on the photograph. Like if you move your mouse over to the photograph, then
the RGB points will show up.
right. But if you when your mouse is not on the photograph, then it says the ISO and the lens, the f-stop and everything else is listed under the histogram.
Right.
Real
Uh,
tiny.
Thank you.
And if you have to denoise, that should be done at the beginning. So my white balance, probably it's going to be, I'll probably leave that where Val shot it. I don't want it too blue. I'll leave that alone. It's custom, it's as shot from her camera. And now the histogram, this is a difficult image to use a histogram on because she's bumped up against the blacks. That's why this triangle is on. And if I click on the triangle, I get a little box around it and it shows blue. This means this black here has been clipped. There is no data here. That's pure black, and you want to minimize that happening. But in a fireworks scene, probably there's no detail there. We'll have to take a peek at that. And she's the highlights are lit, that triangle's lit, so she's pretty close to having just pure white with no data, and that's what you're trying to avoid. But all this mid ground here is um, there's no data. We're probably just having data here, and we'll see if we can get any data here. So then my next step would be to look at this part of the process, the tone and presence. And very often I will start with a little dehaze and or texture. And the reason I start there is because dehaze will darken the image typically. And if I have set my image as bright as I want it, say just for example like that, and now I go to dehaze it, I'm going to make it dark. And now I have to go
Did you
back
mean
here.
to just hit the highlights or did you want
That was,
exposure?
well, no, I purposely just hit highlights. Um, just to show the point. It may not demonstrate so well in this slide, but I will generally give dehaze from at the start as one of my first steps because I know that's going to make my image darker. So now I'll go through highlights, shadows, and we've already done the histogram. I can't show you that for this one. I'll show you the histogram on the next slide. Um, the highlights are the kind of the glary areas, but it does darken. So as I slide my highlights to negative, that's making it darker. If I slide my highlights to positive, it makes it brighter. So the primary way to control contrast, light and dark areas, is to selectively work with highlights and shadows. And that's the best way to affect exposure and contrast, and almost never the contrast slider. Um, so I want to try to accentuate some of this here, some of the colors there. And one of the ways to do that is with dehaze. That increases contrast and decrease the highlights a little bit, and then bring up a little bit of the shadows. Now, this is all global, so this is happening throughout the image, and we may be messing up some of the shadows in here and trying to raise shadows. So I often don't do global changes like this. So I very often will say, okay, I want to darken this a little bit here. And I do that with radial masks quite often. So a radial mask will be like this. And it has a feather. So it kind of blends the effects, I think, better. So if I use the radial mask, I'm now doing nothing down here in the darkness. Decrease the highlights a little bit, maybe see what happens. Shadows a little bit, maybe put a little texture. The effects, the texture, clarity, and dehaze are ways to increase contrast. And the little particles are the texture effects. The bigger effect is with dehaze. So this is a bigger effect. In contrast, the texture is a smaller, more almost like a micro contrast. So I can bring out these flares with the texture slider. Let's pick another one. Radial. Let's look down here. And we'll try that again. We'll go to high. If we go down too far with the highlights, we're going to lose them all. So maybe they need to be lightened. So I can lighten them this way. We have a problem right there with that hotspot. So you can lighten an image by using your highlight slider, and that's what this is doing. So if I brighten it up a little bit, that means I'm getting a little glare. We'll see what happens with some dehaze. A little bit of an effect. And the textures really brought out this quite a bit. So if I turn this little eyeball, turn that off. So I think that brought that out pretty well. I don't like that bit of noise, bright light there. So since this is not a Burke's competition, we can use the remove tool. Generally speaking, I would suggest not using the AI to start with and see how it works. This is probably not going to work well. And it didn't. It screwed up that. So we'll undo that change by going back to the history. And I'll go back one. So I've put that back, or I could have canceled it. Let's try with the generative fill. So that's a remove with generative fill. Increase my arrow, I'm sorry, my circle by using my bracket key, the square brackets on a Mac. And when you use the AI tool, you have choices. So that's one choice. Oh, that's pretty good. Two choices, and that's probably better. So um, that's with it, that's without it. So the question is, what do I do about I assume that's a bridge. I don't know if this is Reading. So I'm going to increase the exposure grossly just to see what I'm dealing with. I'm assuming that's the Penn Street Bridge with a bunch of people.
This is downtown Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, okay. So it's not the Penn Street Bridge.
It's not.
Okay. So we obviously don't want that kind of exposure, but we need to try to bring out, I think, some of the scenery. So in order to set up a mask, as I mentioned earlier, I'll increase the exposure so I can see what I'm doing and so the mask can see what it's doing. And maybe I'll use an object tool, um, an object for the bridge. Just see how that does. And that did a pretty spectacular job of the bridge. So now, and I'll work on the undersurface of it as well in a moment. So I'll go back to out of the mask, bring my exposure down to probably where it's going to be. Let's just leave it where it's at. Now I'll go back to the mask I just created and see how bright I can make that by increasing the shadows, by increasing the highlights. I'm not going to work with those lights there. The next choice to make it brighter would be to increase the whites, and that's just not doing it. That's really underexposed. And maybe this part of the bridge is good. This is probably dark. So what that tells me is that mask is not going to work. So I'm going back up to my mask. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to make a new mask. First, increase my exposure again. And now I'll mask out with an object selection to about here where it seemed to have a difference. That time it didn't pick up the top of the bridge. So I'll add another object mask. And I'll now add a brush. Decrease the brush with the square bracket. And I want to stop here, so I'm now going to subtract with a brush. I'll come out of that, bring my exposure back down, go back into that mask. And the only thing that's bringing that up is a little bit of exposure. So we want to get a little hint that there's a bridge there. So now I have to do something with the other side. And I'll try again an object and maybe subtract out the luminosity. Add with a brush. Subtract out with the luminosity mask, this real bright area, and see how that does. So on the right side, under the luminosity range, you can move these sliders around to get an effect of what you want, and just slightly trying to match the exposure of the other side of that bridge. So I'm going to say that that's kind of okay. I'm not perfectly happy with it. I want to increase some of the undersurface a little and do that with a brush. You can't make it brighter than the scene would be normally, so that's going to be part of the problem here. And I assume that Val wants to get some of that opened up. So that's the undersurface. See what happens with the shadows, and it doesn't do anything. It's just, that's really black, and I can't bring that up at all without oiling that area. So there's nothing in there, Val, for me to bring up. You can chime in if there's an area that you're interested in me trying to work on. We'll see
Well, I
what.
was just going to say, I don't have mine out or anything, but what if you had just brought up the exposure a little bit, whatever, so you can see some detail in the foreground? Because that is something that I tried to bring out a little bit. And that's where it does introduce a ton of noise then if you brighten it up a little. But what if
Yeah.
you had brightened it not that much?
Yeah.
And you don't need to see the crap under the bridge, but like the bridge and the reflection in the boat. But then maybe did a mask for the sky, and just darken that to where you wanted it. You know what I mean? Like, what if you had approached it that way first?
Or I was wondering if you had done a luminosity mask for the brightness um
Fireworks and
of the
then
fireworks and then inverted that,
well,
could
let's
you
try
have
that.
could you have then brought up the exposure on everything but the fireworks and then taken that away to leave the sky dark?
Let's try it.
A lot of times I use a brush and add dehaze and maybe even take down the blacks in the sky to get rid of, the smoke, because this was obviously a hot,
So now if
smoky.
you have that mask is the mostly the fireworks and then invert it.
Yeah. So what we've done is we've used, as Jenny suggested, we've told it to work on things that are bright like this, and then fine-tuned it with the sliders. Now go duplicate and invert, and we'll see what the effect is by
Just a little bit of exposure up and then subtract with a brush the sky.
um, well, do you not want this smoke in there?
I mean, I think it's better. The sky looks better darker, so I would hit that subtract
Yeah.
and use a brush and just brush over the sky. Oh, you could just
Yeah,
select if it
I'd
can
get rid
even
of the
find the
smoke.
sky.
Yeah, it did find it by and subtracted
And
it.
now you can see that little boat, which I think is really neat because you couldn't see the boat before.
Um, well, the exposure is up by a stop over a stop.
Yeah, so maybe not quite that much. Now that looks good.
A little clarity will pop up the foreground too, just a little bit.
Mhm.
So that, that lets you see that there's people hanging out watching
Yeah.
and everything.
So generally speaking, most people feel you should not be working with um, dehaze and clarity together. It's typically one or the other. Because
Hmm.
it tends to cause a lot of artifact, and we can't really see it here in this image, but it does tend to cause a fair amount of artifact. Let's pick
Yeah,
it.
I personally don't do dehaze on a whole image, but do it in parts
Yeah,
if it's.
I do
I think
extremely
clarity.
rare global images. Let's try Jane's, see what we can do for Jane's. We have two images here. You have a preference, Jane? So she didn't answer, but
She's still muted.
okay. So I'm going to pick this one. So I'm going to look and see, as I normally would, will this work? If I crop it, is it going to get me where I want? So yeah, I think I can work with this image. Probably not my final crop, but maybe something like that. I'll straighten the horizon while I'm here. Maybe I'll use this to straighten it. And it's probably tilted upward a little bit. Okay, so this is a workable image for me. The next I'm going to look at is my white balance to, I think it was around daylight set, so that looks actually pretty good to me. And now my histogram. So we can expand this a little bit, not quite using all the detail that we can gain from this. So there's a couple ways of expanding the white and black or setting your white and black points. One is to use your sliders. And you don't want to see this clipping. You can see what just happened. The where it's blue that means there's no data there. It's pure black. You don't want to do that. So if you're going to use your sliders, the way to do it is to hold on the Mac, the Option key, um, and then do the sliding. Just as you start to see a spot come up, that means that one spot is now starting to be very close to being blown out, no data. And then when you get that spot, you can then back off a little bit and then stop, and then you do the Option key and the black slider until you start to get a little specks. And now you've expanded the histogram as it needs to be. The way I do it is I use the tone curve, and I
Mhm.
grab the tone curve can be moved here, grab and hold with your mouse. You can see the histogram now is blowing out the whites, or you can go down. I'm compressing it. I don't, for this image, I wouldn't want to do that. So I want to move the histogram to the right. So I'm on the dot, and I'm sliding the dot to my left, and you can see the histogram is I'm restricting it somewhat, and I'm stretching out the histogram. And for the blacks, I'll grab the dot. I can go up or across, and here we're going across, and we've now accomplished the same thing as holding the Option key and using the white and black sliders. So I indicated that I do very, very little global. So global would mean highlights, shadows, global dehaze. That's global. That's affecting the entire image. This image, there's all kinds of different brightnesses and things like that here, and you have to handle all that separately. And the key is the subject. So let's look at the bird and tell Lightroom select subject. Worked out pretty well. Anyone see where it didn't work out well? Right there,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little bit here. So we need to, let's see what that was. I'll turn that mask off. So it's kind of whitish. So somehow we don't want to adjust the brightness of the bird because you can see what happens to the water behind it. So we now have to subtract something. So a couple ways we can try. It's a pretty hot area, so let's try luminance. And we'll tell it this degree of luminance we're going to want to get rid of. We're subtracting that. And this is what it decided on. We can adjust that a little bit if we want. But that looks really good. That picked it up pretty well, except right there. So I don't know if we can bring that back in. Yeah, there we go. So we brought most of that back in. This bird was a little hot here, I guess, and it took that away. So what I'm going to do is to add that part back with a brush. I'll make my brush smaller with the square bracket key and add that in. And right there, it got the sand. So I'm going to subtract that with a brush. Think that got it? No, that's just glowing red. So that's the outline of the bird. We'll try some shadows. So if it's still dark when you've gone the whole range of the shadows, it means it's really a little more underexposed than ideal. The next thing would not be the exposure, but to bring up the whites of that bird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's key. So if I get rid of the shadows and the whites and just do exposure, it brings up the whole range of light from really dark to really light and midtones and all the same. That's why exposure is your last option. Here we've brought up the darkest areas. Now we're going to bring up some of the lighter areas with the white slider. We can increase the highlights. Maybe that'll help us a little bit. We got a real problem here. This is the way this bird is exposed. It's being hit by the sun, burning it out, and it's underexposed here. So it's not an easy fix. And we'll try to work on that edge. So this will probably darken and get a little bit more detailed by dehaze. Very slight. And a rule of thumb is try to keep dehaze at up to 20. Once you start going over 20, it gets really crunchy. So your artificial limit should be ideally around 20. And we have a lot of feathers there, so we can bring those out. I'll go all the way up to emphasize it. You do not want a crunchy image for me to look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of texture. So you want everything to be subtle. And that's why radial masks tend to help a lot to try to make things more subtle. So the question is, do we want the bird any brighter than that? I've gone up a lot with my whites, my highlights, and my shadows. If I need more, I probably have to do exposure, just a little bit of glow. Maybe that's it. It's unfortunate about this, so we'll try to fix that. If I'm going to do with a brush, there's an option here of an auto mask on or off. When there's a fine edge here, you can use the auto mask on. Let me show you this thing here. So when auto mask is on, where the plus is, right now I should not be affecting the water. It should stay within the circle of the plus. If the auto mask is off, that means I want it to flow over. I want that to be feathered in that outer circle and not respect the contrast difference here of that line. So when I'm doing something that's, I really only want the bird, I'm going to have the auto mask on, and now I want to try to keep my brush within the inner circle, and it should not bleed over if I do that properly. I'm going to make the brush a little smaller with the square bracket key. And that's pretty good, but just for the heck of it, let's do that. Now I've drawn grossly over, and I'm going to subtract, say, with color, and see if it can pick out that color. No, it did not. It didn't do that. So we'll go back. So I could use my minus brush and try to get rid of this bleed all over. And I don't think this is going to come back. I think this is came back a lot more than I thought. So I did that by bringing down the highlights of the breast of the bird. So now I have an option. I can use Jenny's thing of duplicate and invert if I want to do everything else. Or these are really different scenes. They really need to be handled differently, I think. Let's try color range for this beach. And it looks like it's bleeding here. And we need to, I would probably just use a brush, a very big brush, and just brush that out. I was trying to think of, there are a couple different ways to do it, but that's really the simplest thing to do. So now, however you want to handle the beach here, maybe brighten it up a little bit. You don't want it real bright, the emphasis on the bird, but it seemed to me to be a little dark. And now the background, see how it picks whether it thinks that this is landscape. And see if it can tell water. There's the water. And actually, that would have done our natural ground. So it did not select the bird, did not select the sand. It's pretty awesome. You click on that one, tell it to create a mask, and now knock the highlights down, maybe make a little more darker by bringing in a little bit of black. If you want to blur it a little bit, you can give it some negative clarity. If you do it too much, it might look kind of fake, but that's up to you how much you want to do it. But a little bit of negative clarity makes the subject stand out pretty nicely. Um, Jane might feel that that blue is not exactly the right shade of blue. So if we do a color mask and tell it, okay, find me blue. And in the color mask, you can select the range. How close do you want to be to right there, what you selected? And that's the range. That's bleeding onto the bird. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to get rid of that. And let's try a linear gradient. And then intersect that. Option key changes this to intersect to a color of blue. So now there's going to be a gradient effect coming down here. Jane wants that a little bit brighter. So we can increase the highlights a little bit, increase the white a little bit, and maybe that looks a little bit more natural. And the final touch might be to put a vignette on there. When you use these 3 lines here, that takes you out of the mask. And now the vignette is down the bottom. And often I'll put about a -5 to -10. Just, you do not, if I go too far, you can see it. You do not want to see your vignette. The purpose of the vignette is just to hold the viewer's eye into the corner, or from going out of the corners. So that's probably where I would stop with that one.
Vince, you could mention that if you hit the backslash key on your keyboard, you can quickly see the before and after when you're within your image. So you could see, do you know what I mean by?
Yeah.
I often do that so that I can see. Oh, it doesn't seem to be doing that for you.
No, it does not. I do use it.
For me, it shows you
You have-
how it looked before and after.
You have to be in a develop mode.
Oh, he's in the
thank you.
library.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's why it wasn't working for
How
us.
did you go to the library? I didn't know you went to the library. So there's your before and your after.
This
You can
is
see the difference.
this is magic.
Phenomenal, right?
Yes.
But
Uh,
I love doing that quick backslash key when you're in the develop to quickly see what you've done compared to how it looked. So
I saved that picture.
so this is Ken's.
Okay.
It's a night shot, ISO 200, so it shouldn't need denoise. 48 seconds, that's really sweet, Ken. F13. Now, it would need denoise if we bring up, as in Val's picture, when we brought up the shadows, it might need denoise, but I'm way up 5 stops and there's a little bit of noise there, but that's really nice. Well exposed. Ken's histogram, he's done both sides. It's a night picture, so there's not much in the middle here. There's one area that might be a little overexposed, and there you can see the redness. So there's nothing we can do there. That's lost data, and we knew that because this was lit. You see the triangle is lit there. It's not lit on the blackness. So it's exposed perfectly for black. But as it turns out, it's a tad bit overexposed for white. So if we needed detail there, there is none. So there's nothing we can do to fix that part of it. So how am I going to address it? The histogram's okay. The white balance, we'll leave it as shot, or we can check what auto might do. I'll just leave it as shot, stick with that. I don't have to check my white and black points. It's really going to be figuring out how much I want to bring up in the shadows. I definitely want to have some detail of the dock to know what's there, what we're looking at. We don't want just this and this. So let me start out with a mask. And it's too different, too broad a range of light to do global for this. So I don't think there's any, this is another image that I would not be doing for global. Let's just see. So we're doing local things out of curiosity. First the subject and then the landscape. So it didn't really pick, I thought it didn't know if it would pick this and the rest of the house. So I don't care for that. Let's see what it does with the landscape option. So kind of got the sky. It's calling that vegetation, not water. Let's increase the exposure so we can see what we're dealing with. Come back to the mask, hitting this circle. Do the landscape mask and architecture. It outlined the architecture really beautifully. Look at it across the sky. And it didn't pick this, the shrub. So I clicked on architecture. It left the shrubbery alone. I think we'll do the dock as a separate issue. That's that little bush area. And then the water, it did a beautiful job with the water. So let's cut the exposure back down to where it was. Go to our mask. Use the landscape to pick architecture. Create a mask. And now see how bright we want to make some of this. So as we're doing the shadow slider, it's bringing up the darkest areas, not the bright areas. If I'm using exposure, everything's getting bright equally. That's why exposure is the last option of choice. So bring up the shadows. That's really not quite enough, I don't think. We can make it a little brighter by opening up, bringing up the highlights, but that's getting the highlight area, which we don't want. So that's not going to work unless we subtract that area. So let's work on the difficult part, which is figuring out how bright we want that. So Ken would have to let us know, but for me, I would probably bring this lightness up to here. But I now want to subtract out the house. So let's do it with luminosity. So now I have the luminosity. Do you see I'm working on my highlight slider? I can bring that all the way up, and the bright part of this house is not changing because I told it to subtract out the luminosity portion. So maybe to there. Let's try that. We'll tell it to go back to architecture and do water, landscape, water, create the mask, bring up the shadows of the water somewhat. We'll get it, and then we'll cut down the lightness in here the same way. Let's see what happens with some dehaze in the water. I'd like to make that reflection a little sharper. So I can sharpen that reflection with texture. That it's really the texture that did it. Watch. I'll turn the texture back to 0. So I've increased the texture. And now we got the dehaze, and we've gotten that to look pretty crisp. Except this is a little too bright, and we'll subtract with the luminance mask this bright area. So that brought that down some, and we can fine tune that if we wanted to with our slider. So now I would probably don't think we're going to get much more on the water. Am I still in that water mask? Yeah. Um, so I've increased this. Oh, there you go. Or this is, I have to fix this. But as I've increased the highlights to make it again darker, lighter, we've opened up the reflection. We can now see that this is truly water. You have beautiful reflections here. This is way too dark. I'm sorry, way too bright. And we'll subtract. I'll try that with a brush. Decrease the brush with the square bracket key.
Vince, you might turn off auto mask.
Thank you.
Want to watch me do it again?
So what you just saw was 100% flow. That means I've laid down the entire setting of subtraction with this brush 100%. I could change the flow, and now it's going to take me repetitive um, um, it's only going to lay it down, say 50%. If I have the flow at 50%, and I'll have to keep stroking over and over and over again so I can affect things a little bit more slowly. What I wanted to do was the pier, um, or the bulkhead, I guess it would be. Um, just see where that bulkhead is. And let's try that with an object. And I'll put the object as a brush. I didn't mean to stop that brush. So now my flow, it's at 50%. So I'm going to have to keep going over and over it until I get it to 100%. Can you see that happening?
Yeah.
Let me increase the flow up to 100%, and now I get in one stroke, it gives me the whole 9 yards. So now with the auto mask off, I'm going to bleed up above the fence here. Um, so that's where the auto mask might be helpful. So just giving you the concept here. I'll bring back the exposure, go back to my mask, bring up the highlights and the shadows, see if we can brighten that a little bit. And that's,
Select the mask. Yep.
yeah, thank you. That's what my problem was. There. So Ken, I don't know what you think about that, but that's
I
kind of
like
how.
it. I like it. It
That's
looks
kinda
good.
Yeah. Would you change anything?
I, I was, I wouldn't change anything. I would have hoped that I didn't blow the highlights out, but I did want to get a longer exposure.
Yeah. Did you use a
So
neutral density filter?
did I what?
Did you have a neutral density on to get that long exposure?
No, I'm sorry. I'm still not hearing that, Vince.
Did you use a neutral density filter?
No, I did not. I just kept the uh, open
F-stop.
the lens open for
Yeah,
that time. I
13.
did not use the neutral density.
Yeah. Um, let's
I
see.
could probably use the polarizer, perhaps. I don't know if that would have worked, but
Becky, Ginny, and Jay, are you good till 9?
I'm still here.
Good. Um,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So this is Becky's image. Um, and it's my first thought is it's a little bit flat. The tone range here is all about the same, and that's what you would get with a raw image. It's a very nice image. ISO is 100, so it doesn't, not going to need noise reduction. The histogram needs to be stretched out a little bit, so we'll go to the develop module and we want to expand the dark area. So I'll go down to my curve, the tone curve, and I'm using the second button here, which is the point curve. There's different options here. You can affect your highlights, your mid-range, and your darks by changing the curve for each one of these. I generally don't use that way. I'll be using the point curve, the second button from the left. And I want to stretch out the dark end of this histogram here. Again, I can go up, or I can go across, or you can go both, which you generally wouldn't do. So I'm going to go towards my right, and I'll be doing this while looking at the effect of the image and also the histogram. So you can see what's happening to the mountain on the left side, left middle, as I move and the black point over. So now you really want to try to get a good white, near perfect white and near perfect black. And that's what the purpose of stretching this histogram like this is. Does it need to be cropped? My final crop is not going to be now, but I know that this is an image I'm going to want to keep. I'm going to want to work with. I might lift the bottom a little bit because this is kind of dead space here. The story is in here to me, and these clouds. So I can do that now. I can do it later. I don't need to do it to say, okay, this is an image I want to work with. I know that this is a good image. And if I crop it here, do a whole bunch of processing and then bring it to here, it'll pick up the process that should have been there. Like with the linear gradient, etc. That's pretty interesting. But I find this break here to be a little distracting. So I might want to do something like that. Again, not the final cut. And now it's looking like a panorama, so I might want to see what a 16:9 would look like. So it's almost exactly a 16:9, which is kind of a standard panorama ratio. So I'm just going to bring that up so I'm cutting right there with my rise. Becky may not like that, but that's where I'm going to put it.
I like it. Yeah.
Now, is it level? It looks level to me, judging right here. If I want to check that, I can open up the crop tool, get the little mechanical level, and put it from here and do that and see. I tilted it a tad bit, but that was really nice. It's a very nice shot. So let's look at how we're going to adjust this different than this. So we'll go to the landscape. It's found the sky. It's calling everything mountain, except the very foreground. A little bit of water, that's really pretty cool. Looks like it did that beautifully. And natural ground. So natural ground looks like a winter if you want to include the mountains in the background. And I don't think I want to, because I want there to be, I don't want to make this real sharp if I'm making this real sharp. The natural landscape would have this less crisp. You don't want to do it all the same. So using the landscape, it doesn't look like I can differentiate those. So I can make a big object, big brush, pick my object. I'm going to go down here and it should recognize contrast. If you let go of the cursor, it will pick up all those ridges. If I let go of the cursor, it stops making the object, and then I have to hit add object. Most of the time, if I stop here with the periphery or the perimeter, it'll do the whole thing. Often, sometimes it doesn't. So I tend to just keep on going. And that's really good. And however, it noticed the contrast difference and it didn't include this. It used that the same as this line. So now I'm going to add, and I can use another object or just a brush. The mask is off. I'm just going to brush this in, and my flow rate is at 73. You can see it didn't get fully red. I'm going to move the flow rate back up to 100. The flow you change if you want to do something really gradual. So there's the foreground, separate from the background. I'm going to look now at dehaze. That's a really good example of how dehaze is a contrast control. All three of these are contrast. Let's look at the difference with dehaze versus clarity. And they're totally different in their effects, and clarity to me and to a lot of people that I've worked with find it to be too gross of a tool. The dehaze is making this pretty dark back here. We'll have to work on that. But now we're starting to see some nice contrast in those hills from, I don't know where that is. It's not Death Valley, is it?
Yes.
Is that water in the center? Was it flooded, the valley floor?
Yeah, that was yeah, that's I believe that's the Britsky Point. And
Yeah.
that was the
And the valley
salt
floor just
flat,
flooded
the
out.
water in the salt flats way off in the distance, I believe.
Yeah, that was very unusual. That happened 2 years ago, I think.
It's been different. I've been there 3 years in a row, and it's been very different every single year.
So what I've done here is I've increased the shadows a little bit, decreased the highlights. If I go all the way both ways, it makes it flat. You lose all your contrast. You don't want to, if you've needed to go both directions max, then your exposure is off. And this histogram is way too good for that. The histogram's right on. So right now that part looks good. This is too dark for me, and we want to increase that. So let's see if we can do a mask for that in a color. Let's try color range and pick the dark. And it didn't pick this dark. So if you want to get right now, it's picking the exact pixel that I checked on. If you can do up to 5 picks by holding the Shift key. See the plus sign? And now I'm going to click over here. And it added more down in here. We'll have to get rid of that. So now it's selected out this mountain pretty well. It brought in some back in here. But when you use the color, you have a range. You can tell it you want it to really restrict to only the pixels that you've selected. So I've gone down to 1. Or you want to go overboard and go all the surrounding pixels to what you picked. So we need to get somewhere in between. And now I'm going to say, let's intersect that. I want to get rid of this. I could paint all this away, but let's try intersect again. Option becomes intersect. And now we can do either brush or radial. Let's try the radial gradient. So it's going to select the color range that's within both. Now you can see it's picked some of this up. This is my feather. I can change that feather if I want to. Right now it's at 42. I can go in and out with the feather and make it real hard or real big. I usually go around in the mid 40s. So that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to bring up the shadows here a little bit, see if we can lighten that up some. Maybe something in that ballpark. I need to get this back. Let's do the sky next. Generally, the highlights will come down. The one place that clarity works is often for the sky, but you have to be really careful not to overdo it. So I'm gonna, if I go way overboard, it really brings up a lot of blackness and artifact. You don't want to put texture in the sky. You could try dehaze. Again, you can see how it's really building contrast. It's making it really artificially dark. Generally, a little touch of dehaze of clarity to me works pretty well. Now, I would like to see this a little darker up top, and I don't really like that. I got rid of the dehaze. So highlights. I think that's all. I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to bring down a linear gradient to darken that. The sky looks a little problematic right in here. So this is 100% of the effect and now 50% to 0. So we'll show you that with the exposure. So 100% and then tapering down. So if we want to just darken that a little bit, just a tad like that, perhaps. We want to open up some shadows, maybe.
Can you show us the before and after real quick?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you ever play with color in like your sky to pump up like this was sunrise, and you can kind of see the colors peeking, in the background. But
So yeah, I'm back to, I've activated the sky mask and I can change and make this a little warmer. But I'm not sure I'm liking that. It is really blue, so that's if you really want to, if you want to totally change the tone, you can play with obviously not that with you. I generally will add a touch of overall to the scene with the vibrance, not the saturation slider, but let's just give it a little bit of vibrance and just see if that does anything. That's the before, that's the after, before and after. You have to be really careful
that
not to
looks
overdo
great.
vibrance. I usually go
Yeah,
about five.
I'm so used to doing everything in Photoshop. This has been really, really interesting seeing how you were able to get a lot done in Lightroom with everybody's images.
Yeah.
Hey, Vince, what about black and white with this image?
Yeah, you read my mind, Jay. I have a note to do something in black and white, so let's try that. Let's just see auto white balance. Yeah.
Because that looks like that would be a pretty dramatic image in black
Yeah.
and white.
Yeah, let me get back to as shot. So now when I convert to black and white, I do it either here or in Photoshop, sometimes in Silver Effects, but I've really gotten a lot away from Silver Effects. I just prefer to do it myself here. So I'm going to change this to a black and white. Actually, let me just do the water first, Jay. Landscape, water, create a mask. So I don't want it brighter. I'll just cut down the glare a little bit, maybe give it some texture, just a tad. Okay. And I'm going to leave this mountain range. You can do an object selection of that. Let's leave that be. Um, so I always will do my color adjustments first, even if I know I'm going to black and white. And now I use the black and white conversion in Lightroom. And now I have the black and white mixer where I can effect the various colors plus or minus. So we know the sky is blue. So now it becomes what do you want to do with the color? In Photoshop, you can mask out and be really controlled on how you do this, but generally this works pretty well, very well. And you basically are going to go back and forth with the slider, see if you see anything. Now there's some change happening in here. And do you want the change or you don't want the change? I would like to emphasize this contrast here as opposed to blurring it out. So that's in order to bring that out, that has a red tint to it. I've increased the red slider, the orange. So, Becky needs to decide which way do you go here. This is the creativeness of it. I can open up the orange tones, or I can darken the orange tones, and maybe that looks pretty dramatic, and maybe you want to just lighten it up with luminosity a little bit, but that's added some really nice contours in there. Usually yellow and orange are in the same mix, and you can lighten one. If I do that, it's really flat. So if I lighten the orange a little bit, I'm sorry, lighten the yellow a little bit and darken the orange. Any green in here? Not much. As I go positive, as I go to the left, nothing's happening. I can darken the green. There's not really much green there. If it has no effect, double click on it and bring it back to 0. Aqua, really nothing. Might be some purple in the. It's interesting what's happening back in here. Yeah. That might be your orangey sun effect. Magenta as well. So we're kind of filling in the gap if you like it, but now you still have this, but we filled in the gap with the bringing up magenta. So that's kind of where you would go, and I would go back. This needs to be brightened up a little bit for me. And I think we had a mask for that. Right there. Maybe a vignette.
That looks great.
Okay. Ginny. This is a neat one. I can show you I'm going to do the first one, I think, because it's so cool. But this one would probably show us the snow and a little bit of sky. It doesn't always get the sky perfectly, but it shows the snow pretty well. I thought it was going to pick up the snow in the tree, as I've seen on some of my shots. Let me go to that first one. That one's pretty cool. So this might be one that I would possibly do more global edits because it's all pretty much the same brightness. Let's see what we got going on. It's a ISO 400. The histogram looks good. It's possibly blown out there a little bit. So if we hover over the triangle or click on it, it'll show you where it's been overexposed. But it's blank sky, so it really doesn't matter. There's not much difference right next to the red areas. at least at this point. So I want to try to emphasize this. Out of curiosity, let's see what it says for subject. That didn't work. So we'll get rid of that. So I'm going to click on this to open up all the options and without the mask. Bring down the highlights to get a little bit out of this so I can see some detail now coming in the sky. And I can now see when I've decreased the highlights that this area is different than that. And probably we'll see it more with dehaze. So as we increase dehaze a little bit without overdoing it, now let's see what happened. Oh, that's really great. So the part that was blown out has been affected by decreasing the highlight. If I bring the highlights back, it's probably going to, yeah, see it? So there's no detail in here, but it's white. It is white, but it's not as bright as it was before. But here's where the detail is in these clouds. That's pretty interesting. So I've maxed out the texture, which is a contrast, light and dark. So it's affecting the lighter pixels around the darker pixels, and it's caused them to blow out. So we need to be a little careful with that. That's not working globally. I want to try to lighten the tree up a little bit. Try landscape on this. Let's see. So vegetation is everything. That's not helping us. So let's try green. Color range. Green. Yeah, that did it pretty well. And we can adjust the range. How much do we want? How far do you want to expand? This is as close to the exact pixel only. We'll go a little broader than that. And the question is, do we want these included? If we don't, then I'm going to intersect, Option key, intersect, and Option key, intersect, and use, say, a radial. Could use a brush. And now only what's being shared is being affected. So this guy's not being affected anymore. So let's open up the shadows there just a little bit because it's obviously looking up. We know it's to our mind, it's not going to be as bright as everything else. So did we ruin this? Because that's within the mask. And I think I don't think I want to include that. So I'm going to subtract out with a brush the parts that are in my feathered radial. I probably want to get rid of that. It's not a competition. We'll try it without Gen Fill. I didn't find it that added. And the question is whether you want to get rid of this.
I would.
Was that Jenny?
Yeah, I would get rid of that.
Sometimes you have to go over it again.
Yep.
So whenever you do that, you need to look at what you've done at 100% over in the upper left. And then go to where you change things because you can easily get artifacting. I don't see any. It blended beautifully. So I have mine. You can at fit 100%. Usually this is at 25%, and I'll show you why. So at 25%, I can now do this, and this is how I do a lot of my masking with a radial gradient. I want to expand it like that. Um, and I can't do that if it's on fit necessarily. See, I can't go beyond where the sidebars are. So just as an example, I wanted to do that. I don't, but I'll, but that's why I would go to 25%.
Mhm.
I'll get rid of that last one. Anything you would do more, Jenny?
No, I just wanted to see what you would do with this. I didn't know if you might want to crop down the top a little bit, or I knew D. Hayes would get the sky back. I really hadn't worked on this image at all, and I just needed to grab some raw images and think what might be different that wouldn't be something that Vince would probably take a picture of.
Well, this bothers me here.
Mm-hmm.
So I use a lot of 4x5 crops. So when you're cropping,
Mm-hmm.
I like to keep my ratios set for my portfolio and things like that. So I generally have that locked. And 4x5 is a go-to ratio for me.
Right, then you can move that over and even remove a little tree. Yeah, there you go.
I don't like this getting cropped off, but we'll see what that. So now I have an option. I can go
Right.
back to here.
And then you can remove that errant
Exactly. And that's
petal.
probably what I would do. I would probably not bring it to here to get rid of on the right because
Right there's all right.
it's cutting off that little flower there. So I think I would probably do something like that and now get rid of this
Yeah, right.
if I was not doing Burks, of course.
Of course, you do it for nature.
There. So to me, that's really balanced. This is no touching here. This is
Here,
great.
turn off that white triangle on the right because I still see the red on there.
Okay.
There.
So there's no touching here. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good intro. This is some negative space, but I feel this is so busy that you could use that. I liked a little bit of blue that we got captured from there,
Now there is a bit of a lens flare in the middle of the tree there.
right there.
Yeah, which I didn't notice until you lightened up the tree.
So probably we're going to need generative fill for that to match a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's no good. Let's look at that at 100%. Yikes.
Yeah,
So let's go get rid of that. That's back to where it was. We'll use the generative fill, and you want to go beyond what you want. And now you have to hit enter or the remove button.
that's
Now
better.
you have three choices.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's good. Except
Mm-hmm.
that branch doesn't quite match there.
Ew, that's not good.
So that might work. You say, no, I don't like it. Do it again. So on the right, you click again. Jay, hang in there. Um,
Not asleep yet.
that's not bad.
No, that's good. That's fine. That's enough.
There you go.
That's great. Thanks, Vince.
Yeah, so the 100, you need to always check 100%. Nice image.
I'm surprised the clouds came out so well.
Yes, they really did. That means that they were pretty well exposed, even though it showed it was a little burnt on the right. Jay, let's see what we got. Cute dog.
It's Gracie.
So my question would be, is it sharp? And you want the eye sharp, and that looks real nice. Or I'm surprised that this is as good as sharpness as it is with the eye like that. That's great. Develop module. I don't need to crop this. I know that this image is going to work, but if I was cropping it, I would probably do a 4x5. We want some space here. Maybe something like that. This is a problem. We have to get rid of that. That'll be easy. So globally, the histogram, oh, it's 6,400. So you can be guaranteed this needs to be denoised. So we're gonna, as soon as we lift up shadows, it's gonna get grainy. So you should denoise first. You don't have to, but if you don't, Lightroom's gonna put up a warning flag and make you go back and check a box. So we've denoised it. That will allow us to increase shadows. Let's do it this way without getting a ton of grain. You can see some in here, but that's probably a lot smoother. I'll go to the first one. This is before denoise. Okay, there you go. Look at what, as you bring up the dark areas, the picture's falling apart here. What happened to my denoise?
How do you like Lightroom's denoise?
It's usually great. Almost everybody I've worked with online has converted over, and I use Topaz occasionally, but not much.
The photo Bert who spoke for our club,
Yes.
he uses Pure Raw DxO, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, just
For
can't.
what it's worth, Jonathan Vanes teaches that, but he doesn't use it. Um, so I don't know much about Pure Raw. I'm
Yeah.
adjusting the histogram to open up the right side some. Um, or a little dark on the dark side, you can see by the shadow. So by adjusting my points here, I've had the histogram expanded as much as I can. This mask is pretty good. It missed it right in here. I don't know why it continued the dog there. Let's try that and then subtract with a color range right in there and see if it got rid of it. Still some there. I'm going to hit the shift key. Yeah, that's better. So now we want to maintain some contrast. I want to lighten up his dark fur, his or her.
Her.
With people and animals, you really have to be very careful with dehaze. It will bring out a lot of flaws in skin. So just a tiny, tiny bit dehaze. Anything with fur, you can usually use some texture, but if you overdo it, you can look at that and say, holy smokes, look at this. That's not normal fur in a dog. So you need to be really gentle. Less is better than too much. So the lighting looks beautiful here, Jay, with the window light. I assume here it's falling off nicely. Artistically, whether you want this to be brighter or not, I don't think you do.
No.
See if it interprets this as a person. I've never done that. No, it did not. Okay, so we need to brighten the eyes up. So the typical way to do that is with a radial filter. So to spot the radial filter, you put the center where you want, push the mouse, and then expand. If you wanted a perfect circle, you hold down the shift. So you can see my border. This is the feather. This is the bright. And for eyes, human and otherwise, increase the whiteness a little bit. Increase the. So it's mainly the shadow that's brought out that eyeball. And we'll do the same on the other side with the radial. And I have to be careful what's going on to the fur a little bit, but the shadow should not affect the fur, but it will, the highlights and whites will see, so that's not going to work so well there. So we're going to be restricted to, yeah, that's to increasing the shadow there. How about if we put a radial gradient? There are many images that I just use radial and nothing else. And I might have 5 or 8 radial filters. Um, maybe like that. And how about another one? Um, should not need generative AI for this.
I was just going to ask if you were going to remove that, Vince.
And
Did you just cut back on the exposure there or what?
no, I use the remove tool right there.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
now, do you see what just came on?
No.
This orange warning flag that told me I did something on top of something that needs to now be fixed. So we denoised first, but now I've removed stuff from it, and it now needs to update the pixels to make sure it worked okay. So when you've done a global change like denoise or exposure with a mask, and now you put a mask on top of where you've changed something, this thing here turns to um, um, an orange circle to tell you you need to go back and it needs to fix those pixels. So let's take a look at what we just did over there, 100%. And it's not perfect here. So let's try that again. That looks okay now. Back to I kind of like this, but it's a little too bright for me. So I don't want to get rid of it, but I want to cut it down. So that's the linear gradient would work well if I come down through the dog. But now I don't want to touch the dog, so I'm going to subtract subject. So now as I go up and down with the exposure, the dog isn't being hit, right? Because I subtracted, I laid basically one mask down the linear and I subtracted it with another one. So we'll cut down the overall exposure. Yeah, the highlights. So there it goes. The highlights seem to work pretty well there. So we get a hint that there's something there.
What if you'd put a big inverted radial gradient around the dog and just bring the outer edge a little darker? Like the whole dog.
So this is where reducing the size might work. So let's go 25%. So that I can carry my mask down like kind of like this. These little buttons here are the different masks that we have on. So now we're directing basically the light. So we can invert that mask. This is the mask in the upper right. The 3 buttons to invert. And now, what do you want, Jenny? You want it darker?
I would just I would pull the shadows down or pull the whites down or something to sort of really bring your eye into him.
Okay,
The bottom part of the dog could be a touch darker.
Okay, well, we can address that differently. So just out
Or
of curiosity,
exposure a little bit. I wouldn't do too much.
so exposure is going to make it too much. So let's try shadows.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So Jay wants this part here a little less bright, so I can use a linear gradient or a radial. I would probably use a radial down there. The nice thing about the radial, linear does it too, is the feather is so nice. Um,
Now show us the before. Got to go back to develop and show us the before and after so we can see that. Mm-hmm. Yep.
and the F key gives you full frame.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to, this is pretty bright on the left side there now. Still, I'm going to do another linear gradient over there. Anything more in that, Jay, that you would do?
Oh, no, I think you covered it all.
We got people left. We got 7 left. Okay. All right.
Thank
So
you,
I
Vince.
guess we should stop. I hope that was worthwhile.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. I wish we could do this more often.
Um,
Do you learn a lot of the Lightroom stuff from Tim Gray?
I used to use him a lot, and I don't use Tim very often now. Um, I guess I've outgrown him, so to speak. Um, I'm just looking at the comments. Can someone remind me how to get the activity monitor in Mac? That was Val. So
Right at the very beginning. Yeah, you may need to send her an email or
I'll
something.
send her a note on how to
Mhm.
do that. All right, kids.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Pops.
thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Hey, thanks, Vince. I liked a couple shortcuts I never used, so that helped.
Good.